Hey, welcome, blessings. Welcome back. Welcome back, KD.
Thank you.
And David, thanks for being back with us again from the first place.
Everyone.
So we are here for Decan 2 of Taurus. Super exciting that we're already deep into the Decan. Decan 2 of Taurus is ruled by the moon, the silvery shining one. And here we've got the High Priestess being called the Priestess of the Silver Star in the Hermetic deck. And then we've still got the Hierophant for our Taurus ruler, and the Venus. Yep, nice. And we've got the Six of Pentacles, which we'll talk a little bit about. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about as we get going. 36 faces. This is a really beautiful and ancient image being compelled through Austin's rendition of this Decan. It's the Linga, so the Linga and the Yoni. So this is a representation, a primordial representation of the divine coupling of primordial force. So the Shiva and Shakti elements, if you guys are familiar with that. Katie, do you want to show this is the physical form of the coming together of the Linga and the Yoni. So you've got, let me see, I'm just going to exit out of full screen here. Yep, so you've got the different parts, the phallus part, and then the cave part, if you want to keep going. You could just kind of like spiral through and then end sharing when you want. I just wanted people that weren't familiar with this image to have an idea of this. So this is the primordial kind of essence or the structure of the Shiva and Shakti counterparts, which I thought was perfect for the Hierophant and the High Priestess. Austin talks about here, I'm going to maybe go to a couple of notes that I have here. So the first Decan of Taurus, we've encountered a fear-tainted vision of poverty and the necessity of working the land. And here in the second Decan, we have this potent formula revealed. Here, Austin starts to talk about the Maypole, May Day, Earth Day here. I think they've designated, I forget the exact date of Earth Day, but Earth Day is kind of like centered around that as well. And then we've got the Festival of Beltane. So happy Beltane, all of you pagans out there. This represents the procreative union of the sun and the earth. So that's what's being kind of celebrated in both the Shiva Shakti and the Beltane Maypole tradition. The sun's rays here penetrate the warm earth. And just as the plow divides the fields, making them ready to receive the seed. Yeah, so I thought that was really kind of poetic and beautiful the way that he puts that, and that really roped in that fertile land that we have here in this. And not to jump ahead too far, but we've now got the Six of Pentacles versus the 5, which represents a lot of that abundance that we see in the fertile soil of the union of Shiva Shakti, the union of the Hierophant and the High Priestess. And again, that symbolism of the Maypole, which, you know, I'm not sure about all the scholarly debates that go into this, but originally the Maypole was a living tree. So it was a worship of the divine in nature. And as the Maypole became a longer tradition, and eventually it was kind of like stamped out with kind of the coming of Christianity with its phallic representation, but there used to be a hole dug into the earth, which was that Yoni component, and then the Maypole was put in and erected, and people would dance around it for this fertility ritual. And again, that harkens us, I feel, to the Linga that's placed onto the Yoni in order to worship or embody this divine tantric coupling. Just the way the sun's rays penetrate the earth. Do you guys want to add anything just off the bat, just to kind of the introduction of the name of the names or the essence?
There's just a comment that I want to make about Brazilian culture that was coming through my head. Like we have this June party that we do here every year that's called June party. And we we celebrate a few specific saints on that month. I think there are 2 or 3. And that's a very like festive month here in Brazil. Lots of them are. And it's got this tradition of putting a pole in the middle of a carnival, so people can, and you dress that pole with a lot of slime, and you try to go up until the top of the pole to grab whatever is on top, and then you get prize. And then several men try to do this thing. Several people try to, but mostly men because they're stronger generally, and try to impress their girlfriends in this party. And in these kind of more tradition, because it's a religious thing, so it's generally more of a straight normative scenario that you find in these fairs. So it's kind of the culture around it. I just found it very interesting.
Oh, that's exactly like it, because they when the super unbridled sort of paganistic maypole started to get translated through the cultures, I guess you could say. They did start to dress the pole also. They would dress it with ribbons, and then it became sort of this dance, and you would like weave these ribbons. It's cool with the like slime, because actually we
do dance around it. We do dance around
it. Yeah, here's a picture.
Not around
yes,
it, but we do have these dances that are circular in this same tradition where the pole is stated. Like we dance in that same place.
Exactly. And it's the exact kind of thing of the fertility rituals and the sort of like dancing and making merry for the coming of the year, the planting of the seed, all of those things. The planting of the seed being a huge part of this fertile soil, and this technically kind of like a little bit of maybe mating ritual that came with those fertility cults. But even now. Oh, sorry.
Like Valentine's Day here in Brazil is at the same time, is around the same time, same month.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we
That's
celebrate
really cool.
It's not Valentine's, it's actually just Lover's Day.
Yes, it's a total similar thing. And even now to this day in Shaivite culture and ritual, we take this Linga Yoni combination and we offer it honey and ghee and milk and all of these like, you said you dress the pole with like all these slippery substances or whatever. And it's definitely this long and deep imagery that we see as far back as we look, to be honest, And I thought it was cool.
And widespread.
Yes, widespread, global, like you can see it in every culture. So, it's super beautiful to me because I'm a part of that tradition and super special, but also, with the living tree, I thought that would really harken to this sort of vibe. And so since we're talking about fertile soil and planting the seeds, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to put a link in the description to the Save Soil movement. It's a song, it's a movement, it's a dance, it's an anthem. And I thought it was really perfect to have here with the dancing and the merrymaking and the heart of good soil and what it means to humanity. So Save Soil, check it out down below. And also the emoji. Let's go ahead and drop like a bull, or maybe we could drop, what were we thinking? We could drop a moon. We could drop a moon for the high priestess.
Or a cow, yeah.
Yeah, or a cow or the bull. That all of that would work. Or even coins or a scale, because we've got here the 6 taking from its scale and distributing, kind of how we talked about the wealth and the poverty last time. Now we've got the person maybe coming out of the church or coming out of the castle to distribute some of what they have to the impoverished below, shall we say.
Yeah, it's a figure that speaks to the people in the 5 of Pentacles, also finding that opportunity that's more suitable to them through that perseverance, or perhaps through the finding of a true
yeah, I mean, frankly, they do look pretty similar. The people in
definitely
the 5 of Pentacles are the same people in the 6 who are receiving the material wealth.
And if you look well into this character, it looks like the magician. I feel like somewhat the character that's handing out the materials. And I feel like these 2 cards, like the 5 is looking up at the 6th. at the 6, and I think Darren said this the other day, and the 7th is looking back at the 6, because the 6 for those two cards is the centerpiece that kind of gives it stability. It gives those other two reference. You got these two cards looking at the 6 back because the 6 is kind of this reference point where the energy kind of reaches some stable ground. All the 6s in the tarot are like that. They're more stable energies of their suits. And so the 6 of Pentacles is, I would argue, the most stable of them all because it's the earth sign 6. It would be an energy that creates an influx, an outflux, like a flux of wealth and materiality that generates abundance, like for the people around it. Like whenever you have a rich nation, for instance, you have more individuated people who have embodied their own selves, characters, or what they collectively identify as an identity. They've developed it, to their fullest capacity, and they have the resources whenever they need it. Their governments or their locals or whatever it is, their support net that is represented by Taurus, institutions, the Hierophant, is there for them, and they know where to recur. They know how to recur to it. They know how to go for it. So speaking of the High Priestess as well a little bit, I think that gives like the High Priestess knowing instinctively also the secrets and where they are and how to really follow to where you need to be to get that opportunity, to get what you need. I feel like the 6 of Pentacles gives you that security. If I get sick, I know there is going to be a hospital with a healthcare system that's going to be provided for me, for instance, and that gives me a sense of stability that allows me to individuate much more freely.
Yeah, it's true. And though it's kind of, to me, it speaks of the abundance and the wealth of the mystery of, because you've got the beautiful teachings of the Hierophant and the High Priestess here, just now wanting to bring in those charities. Remember how we talked about the charities last time? The three kind of like siren-esque women from the 36 Heirs of the Zodiac. I'm going to read here because the 36 Heirs of the Zodiac now we'll talk about from that same fragmentary Hellenistic text is very similar. So I thought this was really cool. The 36 Heirs of the Zodiac from this Hellenistic text associated the Horai with this Decan. And this is super important word for us, people who study Schmidt and who study the Hellenistic kind of language. So the Horai are associated with the hours. They're the hour markers, right, that we use. They were a trinity of goddesses who were responsible for the regular motion of all things, which also has that wealth benefit aspect to it. They were especially associated with the wheel of the heavens and the rotation of the seasons. They were venerated in connection to agriculture, where attunement with nature was natural order was vital. They're also associated with the character traits that lead to a successful life, which is peace, order, and justice. So it's kind of taking that harmony of union and bringing about its highest ideals, right? That peace, order, justice, where we have the charities that could go one or the other way. Here we've got the person actually coming out and balancing things by giving, right? So I thought that was really beautiful. And just one more quote from Austin: one cannot decide to water a plant when one chooses, nor can one make up for the neglect by a double application the next day. Consistency and dedication must join fecundity and passion to complete the picture of this face, or to complete the picture this face provides. So I think we see that with what you were talking about with that stability here and how Austin puts it, and what you said as well. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that too, KD, when you were talking about the exaltation of the luminaries.
Yes, yes. Before I get onto that, though, I do want to mention that also in 36 Secrets by T. Susan Chang, there's another ancient Greek phrase used to describe the Six of Pentacles, which is kairos. Roughly can be translated as like purpose, which she associates with all the sixes. And that it has to do with right timing, also reminding me of the Horai and the turning of the wheel. Having the correct energy at the correct time to take advantage of an opportunity as those beneficiaries in the Six of Pentacles are doing. They just happen to be at the right place at the right time for this noble to come by and increase their wealth and their abundance. So I love going back in time and taking a look at some of those phrases that are related. Very interesting piece. But what I was going to say about the luminaries is very interesting is that the exaltation of the sun is at 19 degrees of Aries. And so that was when we were doing the Aries 2 decanic video. And then this specific Taurus 2 decan is actually the exaltation of the moon. So here within the first couple of months of the new astrological year, which begins on the vernal equinox in the north, the fall equinox in the south, it's already the luminaries have been present in their decans of exaltation, really highlighting the importance clearly of those two planets, but also the sun and the moon representing two different sides of something, again, which we'll get into more when we look at the high priestess and the Hierophant, being a little bit of a masculine and feminine energy. Now, we don't mean those to be complete carte blanche statements of gender, but that is how they are conceptualized symbolically in the tarot. And so we can look a little bit more about that in a little bit, but the dichotomy, the sun and the moon, the high priestess and the Hierophant, the empress and the emperor, which we talked about in Aries 3, those two sides are very interesting to consider, and having their exaltation so close to each other in these decans.
Yeah, and David, you were saying something about how you saw the emperor and the empress and now the high priestess and the Hierophant. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can mention that quickly. With the Aries coupling, like divine coupling that we saw in the end of Aries, we had the Empress representing the feminine side, and here you can't, as Katie was saying, apply our social concepts of gender. This is deeper than that. It's about a kind of energy that is conducive to rest, or an energy that is conducive to harmonizing, and another energy that is more conducive to action and to deharmonizing and to restructuring. So active and passive in a way, but not quite. Those things spin around that particular thing. Anyway, with Aries, we had a ground that was Martian. So it's more about Martian, individualistic, self-oriented kind of actions, even in a Venusian decan. It was the base for action. But now we see, and that was the Martian one, but now we see, and we saw these figures of high ranking, like of high rank, like the Emperor and the Empress. They're generally high ranking in military service as well, and they're in many cultures. So Mars. Venus, on the other hand, with Taurus, comes to us with the religious piety, as she's described, as the keeper of that particular virtue, and she comes to us with the high priestess and the high priest or Hierophant, showing that she also has, like, Mars and Venus both have these roles of being kind of the king and queen's guard in a way. They are the king and queen's counselors. They are the ones that bring them the things that they like the most. Mars brings high rank to the sun and recognition. Venus brings beauty and harmony and stability to the moon. And so that's why I think you have this connection between the exaltations in these particular signs, especially in the middle of them where they are most stable. You have the luminaries having their portions there in this Chaldean order.
Yeah, and it's so different too than that sort of Martian expression of the like you said, the rank. It's an emperor and empress. They're a ruler. They may have had military service. They have to look over all of these kind of like contracts and governance and all of this. It's a totally different feel with the Hierophant and the high priestess. They might look over certain types of contracts, their spiritual ones, their inner ones. So you have this sort of inner world and external world. And what I think is really interesting, we talk about the Shiva Shakti, but in this tradition, the Shakti prevails. The Shakti is what you know, the Shiva is birthing from or spiraling around or coming from and going to kind of this, if you think of like I don't want to say like a black hole, but dark matter, something like this. You have this dark matter that everything is moving towards, a part of, it's within everything, but yet it's not explained. That's kind of like a high priestess energy and a Shakti energy. But what I thought was really interesting, of course, the exaltation of the moon, but you've got Venus, who is a feminine archetype, shall we say, and also the moon, who is the luminary of the night sect, and Venus is the benefic of the night sect, right? So it's a very lunar, intuitive, and not just because of the high priestess, but just because of the Venusian of the night lunar combo that you have here. So even though we're going to be talking about that sort of like dichotomy of like the creation that manifests from pure energy or pure existence, I feel like it tips towards the side of that pure existence with that sort of feminine quality of the moon being the luminary exalted in Venus's abode.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to speak to the fact that religion and political power, they have religious and political powers, they have been hand in hand. And that's what we see with the Hierophant and the High Priestess, with the religious power, and with the political one, the Emperor and the Empress. And those are Martian and Venusian significations. If you look at the Venusian ones, which are the ones that we're focusing on today, you see that religion is about how to make the people have balance within their culture with the environment that they're inserted to. So that's why you need people that interpret the will of the gods, so the people can survive and the people can live in harmony with nature and not have their will and their individuation threatened as a society by natural forces, you know? And so it is about maintaining the balance with the earth. And that's why also it has a balance. The Six of Pentacles, he holds a balance. He's balancing the amount of resources he can invest on each thing. He's balancing for each situation what is best needed. Much like the earth doesn't waste any resource purposefully. It's always giving in measure of what that particular thing needs. And through our consciousness, we may cause a disruption of that balance because we overuse certain elements, but that will create an imbalance because the earth will try to replenish it for what really needs that particular thing that we are using for frivolous purposes.
I think the scale and the idea of balance is like, it couldn't be understated more here, because when we have a tantric union, that's what we have. We have both energies or the energies needed to sustain the seed and the soil and the life coming together in a perfect balance or in a perfect harmony, ideally. And that's what we have with the moon too. Like Venus wants harmony. That is Venus's key signification. It wants this fertile, harmonious thing. And we've got the moon, who's this cyclical creature, right? And it's about the rhythm of the moon, the rhythm of the rain, the rhythm of the harmony of the earth. And you've got them in their perfect sort of element here. They're together, they're able to get in that perfect sweet spot. And I think it's really interesting when we talk about contracts, because in the High Priestess card, the classic depiction here, you've got the pillars, right? Representing those different energies, but supporting one and the same, the black and the white. Yeah, thanks, Katie. And then you also have the Torah in her hand. So I think it would be remiss of us to miss the fact that we've got a lot of Kabbalistic meaning. We've got the scrolls, we've got the keys to the kingdom, we've got this moon resting underfoot of this pomegranate clad, horned priestess here. So yeah, I just find it beautiful. And you see the same pillars again in the Hierophant.
Yep.
So I think this is, it's what.
Yeah, she's almost bullhorned. Yeah.
Yeah, she's bullhorned. Exactly.
and
exactly.
like Taurus.
I'll show this card too, that is just an honorable mention. What I thought was really beautiful to bring in the horned one, or the horned priestess, that we talked about her actually, is the horned one in the hunt with the Venus ruled Mars Decan. And here we see her dancing with the moon, wearing those horns. And here they're kind of like more elk horns, but we see them again and again represented as crescent moon on the head, the bull, the horns of the bull, drop a bull or a pomegranate. I don't think they have a pomegranate emoji, but that would be cool if they did.
That would be cool. If you find one, put it in there.
If you find one, drop a pomegranate below.
Well, I also wanted to briefly, I mean, both of you have said this now, but just to reiterate, it's not that the high priestess and the Hierophant don't have power. They are in fact very powerful figures. It's just a little bit of a different type of power. And when I think of the high priestess, and I think of Venus ruling Taurus, and I think of the social contract, kind of taking it back up to the political, out of maybe the natural world, the social contract is something that underlies societies and communities around the world, and maybe it's a little bit different, but religion does that. It helps ensure the social contract, things like it's not good to murder, you know, very basic things. But again, that's almost like the feminine side, the contract, the agreement, the social cohesion, whereas the masculine side would be the one that's like the not social contract, the Hobbesian concept of life is nasty, brutish, and short. You just have to cut people down and look out for yourselves. And so that's a really interesting, again, dichotomy to think about between these two cards.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at source of power or contract, here you see them coming from an internal, like how you said, like it's not good to kill or something like that, something very basic.
Right.
That's coming from an inner knowing, an inner source of what violence does to yourself, to your loved ones, to the community, how bad that feels, and how disruptive it is, and the fact that we don't want to do that from the inside, from our hearts or something like this, right? So we've got that, again, that esoteric, internal dwelling place, the mystery that comes from within that allows us to question or even know that inner knowing. How do I know? Why do we all know that it's like not desirable to kill or whatever, you know? Because it feels bad when the loss of life happens. It feels bad. So it's.
I was gonna say, and what does that bring us to? This, like, to as a society, what does upholding all of these patterns of behavior and social contract bring us to? Stability through changeability, because the nature of this world and dimension that we are inserted to is ever-changing circumstance. It's the wheel of samsara, the wheel of fortune, things that are up there, and then the wheel of samsara is something different else. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the meaning here, but you kind of get the picture of something that turns. And what is up sometimes is down, what is down sometimes is up, and things keep turning. And here, the only way to be stable through that is to really have the sensitivity of the high priestess to understand how the law works. She holds the Torah, and she keeps the secrets to how to navigate the earth. From her flows a river that permeates many other cards. The Empress, which is the next in order of the major arcana, has the river running behind her in the background of the Rider-Waite Smith depiction. And that river of the high priestess arguably is the one that allows that through circumstance, all the other cards that have that river permeating them in the depiction also are able to invoke power from it and execute their perform who they are on that particular energy that they're drawing from the high priestess of navigating the social structure, because they know they internalize the law. And know how to navigate it. The Hierophant, it would be the representation of those institutions that reinforce that particular law. So if we are talking about an energy of the Hierophant in society today, it would be censorship around issues related to sexuality in the main institutions of power. That would be a resistance to some issues that society have as a high priestess concept, been feeling, it doesn't fit with our current understanding of humanity and reality, so we should shift. But the Hierophant is resisting that high priestess that's saying that and being like, no, we have to keep the things as they are. And I think that the balance between them is shifting, you know, in that particular area of sexuality around society. And that's why we see what we see today.
Yeah, the Hierophant's like rules, tradition.
Yes.
You know, that's
it's like the Pope
keys.
in some decks. Like it wasn't even the
Yes.
Hierophant. It was just like made to be the Pope, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's very different than the High Priestess, which is like fertility cults. And
Yeah,
shit,
yeah.
You know, just like
I have seen the High Priestess in some decks referred to as the Popess, which I find pretty funny, but I don't know what that means.
in the
It's not-
Scampini, don't they do it
Yeah.
in the Scampini?
Yep.
Yeah.
A papisa in Portuguese, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything good to say about the pomegranate?
Well, it's a symbol of mystery, right? And when you embark on mystery, you become a part of it and you integrate a part of that mystery that you know, and it becomes part of you. Like you integrate it physically even, and you cannot let go of it anymore because you've come to know it fully. The pomegranate makes Persephone be stuck on the underground because she becomes part of it when she consumes some food from there. You are what you eat. And in this case, it's quite literally. And that's why the High Priestess has the pomegranates, because once you familiarize yourself with any secrets about the world that we live in, you kind of integrate that as a law for your life to come, you know, and how you should interpret it.
Yeah, I also love that they're like little jewels and that it's just like this highly like, of course, every fruit has its seeds, but each seed is like this encapsulated jewel that represents like these, you know, if we're talking about seeds and fertility and this kind of a thing, but then you've got that little like Martian leftover of them just being like this red, you know, and the color of Shakti in tradition is red, right? We put the red kumkum, we've got this red, like just seed packed, jewel filled symbolism that
they are attractive and abundant, but be warned, you will not depart from them. It's a contract. You will not depart from the knowledge that they give you once you've consumed them. And that's the danger of it. Careful what you wish for.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that's also, I think, the dark side or the shadow side of the Six of Pentacles, because careful what you wish for. These people that are taking up an opportunity, if this card comes upside down or surrounded by bad cards in reading, you can have someone who's trying to manipulate you through resources you really need at this time, and you have to make a more mature choice of, wait, in the long term, I know that this is not going to bring me real stability. It's just some offer that seems like what I need right now, but it's really this long-term poverty contracts that I'm signing off to. It's like a poverty contract. It's like capitalism, where you kind of give everything to it in hopes that it will give some back to you, but it gives you crumbles. It gives you scrambles and
well, it decides,
leftovers.
doesn't it? It really decides. It decides.
It
how
holds the
many
power. Will you take the opportunity or will you starve? Do you really have a choice? No, you have to make a contract. If you're a drag queen, you have to sign off that World of Wonder contract stuff that you don't really want to sign off your life to, you know, like you basically sign away your soul. By what people expose from those particular TV shows contracts, for instance. In order for you to get recognition and validation from society and fame, you got to sign away your soul. So is it really a good thing to sell yourself to capitalism in that way? So the Six of Pentacles, I feel, brings us this particular lesson as well. What's real stability? What is just a lookalike, a copycat sometimes?
And yeah, in this way it's generous. But I think, you know, do you mention something like this? The rich man here is giving from his scales in order to balance his scales. You see them like totally tipped, where if he didn't have the coins in his hand, he might have an unbalanced scale. And he's, you know how people like give to charity just so they can like do tax breaks and stuff like that, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's like, oh, the poor people, like, here you go, here's some coins, but it doesn't actually lift them from their poverty. It may give them this like sense of joy for a moment, but you're not actually necessarily like lifting them up or taking care of the problem in this case. So
Well,
that's the shadow
that
side
guy-
of knowing how to keep up a structure, right?
That guy in the card is this guy, is the Nine of Cups fellow, who looks a little smug, little sure.
And looks a bit like the magician. Like, I know how to juggle things in my favor.
Yep.
and kind of like, I don't know, that that card, particularly the Cups card, has always given me a little bit of like a hoardish, like brutish kind of vibe, you know, like kind of hoarding and kind of like smugly, like
Absolutely.
having all.
I mean,
be.
he even has the same like pajamas on underneath his robe.
It kind of looks like the
it's
Four
tunic,
of Pentacles
darling.
if you think of it too. Like I'm not gonna give up on my own structure and the things that I do for a living, even though it might be worse for other people or it might be bad for other people.
Just the riches that this figure
Yeah.
is wearing in the Six of Pentacles is such a contrast to the rags that are in the beneficiaries of his charity, but also in that Five of Pentacles again. You know, they're in rags. That's a pretty big contrast to his tunic.
Yes, his tunic. But you know, that is the thing. Like before, they're not even getting charity, and the church is warm, and they're outside, and it's snowing. Like at least here, they're getting a sense of relief,
Yes.
which we like, and that's good. It is showing that abundance. It is showing that idea of what Austin was talking about of like, if we stick with it, you do get this like peace and virtue and all of these things. But yeah, just to, you know, see the other side or the dichotomy, like David was saying, it's definitely worth.
When we get to the Seven of Pentacles, things like you see that the help that you were getting previously might have been just a stalling move, you know, or something.
Sometimes people just give to feel better about themselves, and
Totally.
yes, it is like
It's the question: is there such thing as altruism? Is there
Right.
such thing as altruism? Is it just to make yourself feel good? You know, that's the question.
Right. This is a huge, huge question. I think that is being begged of the High Priestess, perhaps, of the Hierophant.
Very good. Very good point.
Yes.
Very good point. And I think that would be a good transition now to start talking about 36 Secrets by T. Susan Chang, this wonderful companion guide to a decanic walk through the astrological year with different tarot cards here. We have up on the screen the 3 that are associated with this decan. Again, the High Priestess, the Six of Pentacles, and the Hierophant. In a bit, I want to look at a couple other images of other tarot cards, but I do want to read the beginning of Chang's introduction to this specific decan, and also mention that the dates of this decan are April 30th, around April 30th into May 1st, until May 9th into May 10th. So this 10-day period falls along that timeline.
Interjected just briefly. Thanks for bringing that up. We're going to start to do that. I noticed that I think you guys would like that if we gave you like actual dates. It's not going to be an exact day. It has to do with the sun ingresses into a certain degree of the zodiac, which we covered in our first video. But just to restate for one moment, we're following the sun through the degrees of the zodiac, and we have them 1 through 10 or 0 through 9, 59, and then, you know, on from there. So like basically 10 degrees, 10 degrees, and 10 degrees to make 3 equal portions of 30 degrees of the zodiac. And we're following the sun. So it's almost like the sun is doing its decanic journey by day, almost approx. So we're going to give you the dates, like the approximate date calendar dates. But really, if you want to be technical, it has to do with the sun, in this case, the sun, passing through each degree of the zodiac. But we will get you the dates from now on, because I think that's smart to do. So thank you for covering that, Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this is the beginning of her chapter, which I think lays out and kind of explains a little bit of what we've been talking about already. Here we encounter 2 more major arcana which seem a natural pair, the High Priestess and the Hierophant. Just as the Emperor and the Empress conjoin in Aries 3, the decan of the 4 of Wands, here we find 2 figures whose differences seem to only underscore their similarities. Indeed, in some decks, we find the Hierophant going by another name, the High Priest, just the counterpart to the High Priestess. All of this to say that these 2 guardians of the sacred are a matched set like salt and pepper. So up on the screen here, we've referenced just a little bit the similarities between the High Priestess card and the Hierophant, which include the columns. I also am very interested by the headdresses that each of these figures are wearing, especially in the major arcana of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Now, we've talked a little bit about keywords associated with each of these tarot cards. The Hierophant being things like institutions, organized religion, organized and institutionalized rituals, as well as the outward manifestation of spiritual practice. Sometimes I think of this almost as a card of proselytizing, when people kind of try to shove belief down your throat. And then we have the High Priestess, on the other hand, rather, where it's much more internal. The mysteries of the divine are wrapped up in this card. A lot of times when I pull this in readings for somebody, it's a message, a loud and clear message. Pay attention to your intuition, pay attention to what your gut is telling you over what maybe societal structures or rules are telling you. And then in the middle here, we have the card associated, the minor arcana card associated with this specific decan, the Six of Pentacles, which is, it's traditionally considered, as Elsa's mentioned previously, generosity, charity. It can also be that purpose or right timing associated with the ancient Greek term kairos. And so there's also another side of that though, right? Like just the disparity that exists for that to be necessary to have the extreme wealth and the extreme poverty present in one card. Before we move on from these depictions, these more recognizable common depictions of these cards, I want to draw your attention to a specific item in the Hierophant card, which are the two acolytes at the bottom of the card, the two figures that are at his feet, that are worshiping in front of him. They have haircuts that make it clear that they're also part of the church. And one of them is wearing lilies, one of them is wearing roses, so the sign of purity and passion. Now, you see also two figures in the Six of Pentacles, which are the two beneficiaries of the wealthy person's funds. So this element of these two lower people underneath the figure in power, I think says a lot about the Hierophant and then also this decan. So just to draw your attention to that before I move on.
Absolutely, where the image of the two
Yes.
in the High Priestess is sort of like this self-recognition. Again, it's a little bit more like that Shiva Shakti kind of like internalized, because they're just internalized in the form of a pillar. So you've got the pillar is maybe the Linga, and you've got the pomegranate is maybe the Yoni, and you've got this kind of like self, like you said, intuition, like this self-propelled Shakti, right? Whereas you see that duality in the other cards in a more physical nature.
Yes.
And every card in the tarot, before we move on from this image, is detailed intentionally. Like you don't have any particular color schemes here that are not thought throughout before they're implemented. So in this case, it's interesting to observe that a combination of these two energies would have a guy wearing a red coat, much like the High Priest, and a blue garment underneath, like the High Priestess. Also, you see that the Hierophant himself is wearing a blue garment below his red garments. So it suggests, again, you have that blue continuation of color there in the right down corner of the card, much like the High Priestess had that flowy dress mimicking a river. You kind of have the Hierophant and the lilies guy with the blue dress. So and the Six of Wands, the Six of Pentacles, sorry, kind of mimics that as well, with the guy dressed in blue being on the left, right. I mean on the right down corner.
Underneath.
Yeah, and when I was learning this, just to talk about the detail, I mean, that's why it's nice to have, I honestly did not have a Rider-Waite deck for the longest time. I had different, like I had the Hermetic deck and everything, but because it was used as a point of reference so often in learning, I got one. And as I was learning, I mean, down to the detail, right, of their garments and the roses on one, the lilies on the other, I was even told that the black and white checkered rug underfoot of the Hierophant was a hearkening it back to the BJ, the Boaz and Joaquin, or how I'm not sure of the pronunciation of the J one, but the two pillars in the High Priestess card underfoot, in kind of like standing at the foundation with the keys. Whereas in the foundation of the High Priestess, you have the foot on the moon, or on the river and the moon, and the High Priestess covered foot balancing the moon there. So yeah, it does. These cards are really worth, you know, just as we're looking at in detail as a traditional
Totally.
source. Yeah.
Do these not sort of resemble female organs up here at the top of the pillar?
They do.
That's
They do
interesting to me
completely.
too. Just noticed that. So disregard if not interesting, but
No,
I-
absolutely, absolutely, they do. The
They do.
the ovarian flow.
yeah. And I before I want to talk a little bit more about the Hierophant card in the next slide, but you might recognize there's a coffee stain on my version of this card.
I
have a
loved it.
complicated relationship with the Hierophant actually, and so this is the only card in my deck that's stained. I don't know what that means, but
I absolutely noticed it right away because I love the patina of a well-used deck.
yeah, it's the only one that actually retained the stain. So what do you know, Mr. Priest? So these are two kind of alternate depictions of the Hierophant that I found really illuminating into the definition of the Hierophant, but in a slightly different way than in the commonly associated Rider-Waite-Smith deck. On the left, we have the Professor. This is from the science deck that I've brought up before. But what I find interesting about this is that in the same way that the Pope or the Hierophant is a gatekeeper of institution and religion, the Professor is a gatekeeper of education and higher learning. So that gatekeeping piece is really important too, when you note the presence, let me go back for a second, of the keys at the bottom of the Hierophant card, which are also mimicked in multiple different versions of the Hierophant card in other decks.
Yes, and we talk
really
about the keys,
part.
and you know, obviously last week we had Matt on, and I'm happy we're refreshing it with you again this week because T. Susan Chang talks about it as the key keeper and the lock picker, right? In in the mercurial deck. So you have that kind of element, and I just wanted to note here, and I'm not sure if you'll go on to say it, so I'm sorry if I'm stealing the punchline, but in astrology, we've got the 9th house representing not only the Hierophant figure, right? So it's religion, it's the joy of the sun, but it also represents higher learning with this Professor action. So I think it's really perfect that you put that in because it's almost like a one in the same signification with this 9th house character.
Yes.
It's anyone who serves as as an image for a higher ideal. Anyone that embodies it would be considered a 9th house figure. So whenever Queen Elizabeth is gone, she's going to be, for instance, for the monarchs to come in England, the figure to copy, much like Queen Victoria, because of her success with the empire, according to historians, would have been this figure to behold for the previous monarchs after her children and grandchildren to look up to. And I feel like this is what the 9th house is. Once you've established that particular pattern, you become the standard for it.
Totally. 9th house is a really great. I actually wasn't going to make that point, Elsa, so that was a great one. Thank you.
And Taurus is my 9th house, so I like what you're saying.
Ah, perfect. Okay, so those are the couple things I wanted to say about the Hierophant, but of course there are also a lot of interesting associations for the High Priestess as well in other decks that get to another part of the symbolism. So not everybody finds the traditional image of the High Priestess resonant with that type of spirituality piece that's so deep and intuitive and personal. So on the left, we have the High Priestess in the Mother Peace deck, which is, yes, Elsa has this too. And I really like it because it's just a alternate cultural representation of what a very spiritual figure looks like. And I think, everybody would do well to have decks that speak to those different experiences because it resonates a lot more with some people than the figure in a veil shrouded with the cross and the bull horns on her head.
Exactly. I mean, here you've got the horns again, but you've got the shaman essentially, which you've got the High Priestess and the shaman. You've got this red tent vibes of this, woman in the womb, like sitting in this crouch position, which is the birthing position, which is symbolizing the nature of the soil, the nature of birthing, and the nature of that kind of internal, like the internal space of Shakti once again, which I love because she's in, to me, this is like in a teepee or in kind of a ceremony or in this dark, like dark but luminous space that this priestess has behind her. And the natural element of the shamanistic world that has been obviously sort of bypassed these paganism things for like a different image. But I also love the figure in the second one, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh yeah,
the dream.
I love this one.
Dreams. Space. When I get the High Priestess card, a lot of times people that want to come to me about like dream interpretation and all this stuff, the High Priestess is right there.
Yes. Yes, and that's something that we haven't even mentioned yet in the keywords of the High Priestess, but it is a very mystical card that has to do with dreams. It can have to do with things that are hidden. The veil behind the High Priestess is significant for that reason. But in this card, again from the science deck, it talks about benzene dream, which is kind of like a chemically induced dream for those who might be in pain or suffering in some way. So I find that very poignant as an example of maybe a lesser understood, but really significant part of what the High Priestess means.
Absolutely.
Dreams,
it's shamanistic visions and vision quests and like substances that induce us to sort of see other realms and have visions of something you can't really explain completely. Yes. And I love how he's sleeping with this book because there's nothing, I read something once and I'm probably going to butcher it, but about how sleep is vital to like memory recognition and studying and all that stuff. And I always found myself like when I'm studying or trying to cram or like I'm reading, and I get in this like sleep state from reading, which I'm sure you guys all know what I'm talking about.
Totally.
It's the most amazing thing to be like reading something super dense and drift off into sleep. And there's a new way that I come back to the book. It's like the body has to sort of go into this subspace to sort of integrate and reformulate as we're learning, you know, to really get it in ourselves in a totally new way. And I've heard that it's really crucial to learning, like, and just sleep in general, like sleep and dreaming is like very crucial to human cognition.
Yep. And it's related to the moon as well. So yet another reason why the High Priestess, we haven't talked about this yet either. The High Priestess is, representative of the moon as the host of this decan, not the moon itself, not the moon card in the major arcana. It's the High Priestess that represents that. Yes. Because of this association with dreaming, intuition, a lot of keywords that are shared with the planet in astrology.
Yeah, good point to kind of pull that out. This is the moon card, the High Priestess.
Yes. And we also have the pomegranates. Don't forget the pomegranates. They got to be in there somewhere.
I know, I noticed it right away. And I love that it's like, it's a picture of maybe like a beloved or something like this.
Yeah.
Like he's got the pomegranates and this picture of this High Priestess, and he's like reading from these books and drifting off into this state of connection with the divine feminine.
Love it. I love it.
And the black pillar in the back.
Oh, yep, there you go. And white. There's the white pillar on the other side.
There's the white one too. Okay, cool. Yes, love it. Absolutely love it.
Oh, I love it. Yep. And then just two more quick examples. This is reiterating the relationship to the moon that the High Priestess has. These are both clearly very lunar cards from other decks. The Dreaming Way deck, and then the what is this called? It's a long name. The Ethereal Visions Illuminated deck is what the one on the right is called. So yeah, got the bull horns, the whole moon headdress up here, and then this one is sitting on the moon.
And has
with
the
some
Torah,
wicked awesome shoes.
Yeah, right. And also, I guess when the screen goes big, do you have more screen sharing?
I wanted to do a couple of the Six of Pentacles, but you can go ahead and we'll keep on talking about the High Priestess for a sec.
Just notable mentions with the High Priestess, just two really beautiful cards when it has to do with the Hierophant. Here we've got the Hierophant dressed in red with the Keeper of the Keys. And then I just loved the depiction here in white with the Purity sitting on the books, right? Kind of like, not necessarily there to, enforce or study or teach, but just like as a representation of lunar knowledge, of just like having that knowledge under your belt essentially already.
Okay. So with the Six of Pentacles, there are a couple cards I wanted to share. One of them on the left is again from the Mother Peace deck. And my first inclination when I see this card is a healer, a Reiki healing of some sort. And it's a different way to think of somebody who has abundance. They have an abundance of skill. They have the energetic resources to be able to give to other people. And I like this because it does take out that capitalistic element. If we're trying to look at it from a more spiritual perspective, it's the generosity of spirit that comes from healing somebody else.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm so happy that you shared that.
It's just beautiful. This card is from the Scapini deck. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's just a unique representation, I think, of the Six of Coins or Six of Pentacles, or the Six of Discs. I guess they're all referred to different terms here. But this is the one I really wanted to share. Again, Micah Ulrich, super badass tattoo artists and just general artist. But this is the Six of Pentacles. And just tell me that doesn't look like the Hierophant. I mean, it's straight up like related to the Hierophant. There's no way you could, not see the relation there between those two cards. So I love it when those sort of subtle, what I assume are intentional decanic symbolic references are woven throughout the deck.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, this couldn't be coincidence. It would be too weird.
And
Yeah.
also with the handshaking above, right? Like that contractual kind of like agreement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those were the kind of versions of the Six of Pentacles that I wanted to share. And the last thing I want to mention briefly about T. Susan Chang's book is that she brings up a very interesting point. We are recording this on April 29th, and the Six of Pentacles specifically is related to lunar eclipses and new and full lunations. So guess what we have tomorrow? The first solar eclipse of our little eclipse season here.
Yeah, and we might get this out
Taurus.
tonight or tomorrow.
And Taurus too.
Yeah, in Taurus too.
In Taurus too. And we're probably, depending on edits, it'll be out tonight or tomorrow. So not good for magical elections, but I think this will be
in honor of Taurus too.
Yeah, in honor of Taurus
yeah.
too. Yeah, totally.
Hopefully it doesn't get a
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get this out. It'll probably be in your hands on the day of the eclipse.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Eclipses in Taurus too.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Six of Pentacles, man. What are you gonna do?
And we have the moon as like a key player in eclipses, obviously. So, and in her exaltation.
I just want to mention really quickly that the Picatrix has some imageries for this decan. Like there rises in the second phase of decan of Taurus, a man with a body like a camel who has cow's hooves on his fingers, and he is completely covered by a torn linen cloth. He desires to work the land, sow, and build. This is a face of nobility, power, and rewarding the people. This is its form. Well, the rewarding the people is pretty obvious, and it's about, pretty much the energy of the Six of Pentacles that we've been talking about. When you generate enough income, enough resource for a lot of people, you generally have a stable society, and you can have just a sense of abundance for every individual that comes up, that's inherent, that is natural, innate to them, without it needing to be harnessed. And I think that this is a part of what the Picatrix is saying. And with the man that has the form of a camel, with the hooves of a cow, it's like someone who has endurance through circumstance, and the hooves of cow represents kind of standing on the wealth that provides, or the stability that provides, that endurance through circumstance and ever-changing scenarios. And what you can do with your resources, because camels are very resourceful. They store water in them, and they can spend large quantities of time without needing to access that resource, because they know how to spend it well. So I feel like the Picatrix is associating everything that we've just said in this way. And that's basically what I have to add from the Picatrix right now.
Yeah, completely. It does talk about sowing seeds and abundance and success, and we've got all of that with the Lord of Material Wealth.
And success, yeah.
Yeah, and just with the, again, with the whole bovine cultures of past, the cow being like this, if the cow's hooves are the fingers or the legs are the hooves, it's just saying like, let's not forget the bull, let's not forget the ram. Like, it's providing us milk, it's our ultimate stability, it's our ultimate image of divine pagan culture. And the camel, right, which was everything David said. They both have these accesses to fluids, even, in a sense, right? You've got milk and you've got the ability to store water and resources of that sort of essential life-giving nature. I wanted to say, when we're talking about this Nativities, I meant to say this at the top of the hour or whatever. When we're going through this, just keep in mind when we're interpreting the decans and when we're talking about sort of their magical or image invocations, this is not an interpretation of the decan in your birth chart per se. We're giving some of these like outlines, some of these major pictures, but even when you've got the sun in this decan and you've got all these nativities with the sun in this decan, we're just giving this overview. We're not saying this is you, this is your personality, or if your sun's here, this is how you are. So I just wanted to say that because when I'm doing these videos, I'm not coming in with an aim of let's tell them what their decan is all about. It's
right.
That's not in my mind at all. So just if you're interpreting it like that, you know, feel free to interpret it how you want to. You may resonate with things, and that's totally cool. But in Austin's book, he goes through and interprets each planet in the decan, and we're kind of giving an overall overarching view of not just the sun, because I'm not even interpreting your sun in this decan when I'm thinking about it, right? So we're not just thinking about the sun, we're just thinking of this overarching theme. So if you were to do like a decanic reading of someone's natal chart, there's way more that goes into it. You've got each planet in a decan and the sun in a certain decan. So it's not going to have the same interpretive value for an astrologer interpreting your natal chart, just FYI. And, you know, I just wanted to mention that when they're mentioning the nativities, because I don't want people to personalize themselves or others in some of the themes necessarily, you know?
There's a whole spectrum of manifestations. I mean, just to throw out a couple of names that I don't have a lot more to say about, both Adele and Karl Marx have sons in this decan. All right. There's not a whole lot that they seem to have in common, although, as David pointed out, we've never seen them in the same room, so they could be the same person. But
well, I think Adele's music speaks, and it's music, right? Sound like the moon. I think that Adele's music speaks to the understanding of social interactions very deeply. Like, people really like her breakup songs because they speak truth to relationships in a deep way. And Karl Marx, you know, perhaps in a similar fashion, speaks to the suffering of the people in another way.
Yeah, and Taurus rules the human voice too. Taurus is the sign that rules the human voice. So there are a lot of singers.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that in the Priestess of the Silver Star, so in the Hermetic deck, the High Priestess is holding some kind of a scroll in one hand, but she's holding a lyre, like a handheld harp in the other, with that Venusian like music and the voice. That's what I have with the Adele and the Marx thing. They both have these really strong voices. We actually looked at Adele's. I wish Adele was in the next decan, because she has a Venus Saturn signature in her chart, which you see really strongly in her music, which is like love and breakup, or love and regret, or love and love lost, or something like this in her chart. So I feel that the next decan might speak a lot to her, some of her voice in her songs as well. But yeah, just the lament of the have and the have-nots, and the bounty and what to do with it, the power and what to do with it.
Yes, that's totally, you know, Karl Marx, for those who don't know, and I don't know why you don't know, look it up on Wikipedia. He was kind of the father of the theory that really propped up communism as a political system. Marxism is often the philosophy that is behind that. So he definitely had a lot to do with thinking about that Six of Pentacles way in which the distribution of wealth is, there's something weird about, like, sure, it's generous for the very rich to give to the very poor, but why is that necessary? What is it in society and human nature that is making people need to owe things like their own labor, their own bodies to the most wealthy and powerful people in a society? So appreciate that from the Six of Pentacles standpoint, right? And another historical figure that I want to bring up because it's dear to my heart is John Brown. So I'm from Kansas originally, and John Brown is a very important figure in Kansas history. There's a huge giant mural of him painted in the state capitol. And so he was a figure in the early to mid 1800s. He was a white man, but he was called a jayhawker or a free stater. He was an early a proponent of abolition of slavery when that wasn't a popular thing to be, especially in the Western United States at the time that all of these farmers and these people who were trying to set up plantations were trying to, keep slavery around so they could have economic gain. So it's messed up, but John Brown was like willing to just straight up kill people who were supporters of slavery. He would go to their house and like slaughter them, sort of situation. But that radical behavior, trying to bring balance to the social ills of the time, I think is pretty Six of Pentacles.
Well, when you have radical power, you have radical rebellion, and
yes.
that's what we can see here. And it has to do with farmers, laborers, resources. Those themes are all top tier. In conclusion, do you have any announcements? David, do you want to talk about your offerings over in the first place?
Sure. You guys can find the links down below. I am in the First Place Astrology on Instagram, Facebook, and I have my website in the first place astrology.com. My offerings are there. I offer tutoring sessions and a plethora of readings that most astrologers do. Solar returns, predictive work, natal readings, horary, electional, and yeah, that's it. You can find me there.
Yeah, and we are embarking on a project, a little study group. You can find it over on Patreon. We'll be launching it around June. David and another friend of ours, Matt, who is doing the decans with us last week, they have a channel here on YouTube, the Astrologer's Encyclopedia. I'll link it below. But we're doing a read along with Demetra George's Volume 2 book in June. So watch for that. It's going to be really fun. I'm sure KD is going to be well a part of that project as well. And KD, your website, your availabilities.
Yes, kddayton.com, just my name.com. And I'm open for readings, doing a lot of tarot readings lately, and really excited again to talk with you, especially if you are interested in a solar return reading, or if you are also a student of astrology and just want to talk about the stars. So
awesome. Well, thank you all both for being here. This has been a really awesome video to do. I hope you all enjoy your Taurus 2. Good luck with the Taurus 2 eclipse. And until next time, ciao.
Mataiya matao kakao bersama yo demikian soba da soba kena mataiba nakau di mawa demikian soba and soba mataiba nabe ujuna baikana kamaya da ongai koyo okoyo masena mata ibe kana sabaso inakina tabaine toyo guys imbai toma tabaike tabaike, Dio non no yoga de sono me yabagorina Kamo yara go yimi on my way go by Dio no no yoga de sono me yabagorina Tomato, tomato